to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 60 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 59 of A Game of Thrones. That's Cat 9.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, we'll discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. And we got some this week, which is nice.
Yes, we did.
Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you with some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm good. I'm well. I'm well. I was telling you, the English soccer season has started up again.
Yeah.
Sort of out of kilter with where it should be, but it started in a very crazy way. The average number of goals per game is up almost 2 goals per game on the same stage of last season.
Wow. That's a big
They
difference.
Just keep banging goals in. It's like without the pre-season training, their defenses have kind of like not clicking, and everyone's scoring against each other freely.
You know, scoring
So
in the NFL. Scoring in the NFL is up as well.
Oh, interesting. I also wonder if it's a crowd thing, without crowds there to cheer you on.
Absolutely, yeah, that could be.
Oh, it literally helps the road team, because the road team has a significant disadvantage in the NFL because the crowd makes a lot of noise, muffling their calls.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
And I believe I'd heard someone say it's actually too quiet, and the defense can sometimes hear what the offense's huddle is saying.
Oh, interesting.
So they're all like, shh.
Do you know what the stats were like on the hockey? Because in hockey, there is a rule difference for the home team and away team.
Right.
Basically, the home team gets to put its players out second, so they can always arrange the matchups to their liking.
Right.
Do you know how the playoffs went without crowds?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's one for the audience. Write in and tell us what we don't know.
Right.
So I will tell you one thing actually. Mars, it's early October here, October 2020, for those from the future. We are still on lockdown. But the planet Mars is almost at perigee, which is the closest point of approach between Mars and Earth.
Yes.
So I got my little telescope out the other day, and it was extremely exciting because for the first time ever, I've had the telescope for almost 10 years, the first time ever I got a really good view of Mars, and I could actually see some surface features.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
For instance, I could see the South Polar region, which is very exciting.
Wow.
So I have a little drawing. I made a drawing.
Yes, you
did.
did.
I'm going to show you. This won't go so well on the podcast, but it's good. You'll hear Mackelly laugh. This is my drawing of what Mars looked like. Are you ready?
Wow. That is detailed.
Well, considering when you look at it, it's just a little orange dot
just
in
a
the
dot,
sky.
right.
That's better, right?
It is.
It's
vastly improved over what you see with the naked eye.
I'll post my picture on Instagram. It's basically a circle with a couple of squiggles on it. But that's a couple of squiggles more than you can see with the naked eye.
Absolutely.
So hooray for my telescope. Yeah. So that was very exciting for me to see that. I'd never seen Mars in such glory before.
Yeah, sometimes we go out together and do some sky gazing, and that's always fun. I got a really cool picture of the moon, though. The one time we went up to the middle school field with Molly, I think. Molly was with us?
I think so.
And I put my camera phone lens up against the lens of your telescope, and I got a really cool picture of the moon. Coolest picture I've ever gotten of the moon by far.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Oh, wait, you had something to tell me.
Do I?
Was there something in the notes?
What?
The Real Ghosts of Harrenhal?
No, that was old. That was the iPad.
The iPad?
Yes, the flying iPad.
All right, so let's get down to business with a quick recap of what Catelyn Stark was up to last time we saw her. She had sailed from the Vale to White Harbour in the north, where upon landing she learned of her son Robb having raised the banners and marched a large army to moat Catelyn. She sent Sir Roderick Cassel home to Winterfell to lead defence efforts there, and made her way to Moat Cailin to be with Robb. She delivered the bad news that Tyrion Lannister had been lost as a hostage, and equally bad news that the Knights of the Vale would not be aiding them in their fight with the Lannister army. She listened to Robb's plan to split his army on both sides of the Green Fork, and guided him to choose Roose Bolton to lead the eastern host. She then announced that she's coming with Robb to Riverrun, rather than returning home to Winterfell and her sons. Why don't we give them the summary of this chapter?
Okay. Well, Cat, Robb, and the northern host approach the castle known as the Twins, the seat of House Frey. Cat is stressed about the well-being of her family, her ailing father Hoster, her brother Edmure, who is preparing to face a large Lannister host in battle, Ned and the girls in King's Landing, and her boys she left in Winterfell. But as she can't do anything to help any of them, she pours all of her efforts into helping Robb as best she can.
The Starks learn that the Freys have reinforced their castle with 4,000 men who were supposed to have been sent to Riverrun when Edmure Tully called the banners. Cat is worried that Walder Frey might sell them out to the Lannisters if the price is right. Robb considers using his 20,000 strong army to pull the Twins down around the Freys if they refuse to allow them to cross the river. However, Cat points out that it would take a long time to do that, time they don't have.
Brendan Blackfish Tully, who's been off scouting with 100 men, returns to tell Cat and Robb about Jaime Lannister's host having defeated Edmure's, and that Edmure has been taken hostage. When Robb begins to make boyish threats against the Freys, Cat points out that for 600 years, the Freys have extracted tolls for crossing their bridge. Robb just needs to find out what the toll will be this time. When Robb and company arrive at the castle, they first realize that a siege is impossible due to the castle's layout, with identical formidable castles on both banks of the Green Fork, and the lone tower straddling the bridge amid-stream. As they discuss this, they are greeted by Sir Stevron Frey, heir to the Twins. He announces that his father, Lord Walder Frey, would like Robb to share meat and mead with him and explain his purpose.
Robb's bannermen are vocally displeased by this idea, to the point where Cat sees Sir Stevron taking offence and fears all could be lost. She announces that she will meet with Lord Walder, claiming that she has known the man her whole life and need never do her harm, a claim she doesn't entirely believe herself. She meets 90-year-old Lord Walder amongst his enormous brood. 20 of Walder's sons are present, along with his new 16-year-old wife and a huge mass of daughters, grandchildren, great-grandchildren and bastards. After some failed attempts at pleasantries on Cat's part, Walder clears the room and the pair talk.
Cat questions why his men are here and not in Riverrun. He explains that he meant to send them, but Edmure lost his battle with Jaime too quickly. He also points out that while he pledged fealty to the Tullys, he also pledged support to the crown, and if he was smart, he would help Tywin destroy them. However, he's not much of a fan of the pompous, arrogant Tywin Lannister. Walder then says that the Tullys have always looked down on him. Cat's father rejected Walder's proposal to wed Edmure to one of his daughters. Hoster didn't attend either of Walder's last 2 weddings, and that Lysa rudely shot down Walder's suggestion that she and Jon Arryn foster 2 of Walder's grandsons, while he fostered little Robert at the Twins. She then stormed off when Jon Arryn told Walder about the plan for little Robert to foster with Lord Stannis on Dragonstone.
This last bit of news surprises Cat, as Ned had told her King Robert had brokered a deal with Tywin Lannister for little Robert. She questions his memory of the fostering plans, but drops it. It's time for the negotiations to begin. Sometimes later, Cat returns to Robb and delivers the good news. Lord Walder has agreed to allow them to cross, and has pledged virtually all of his 4,000 swords. Now for the toll. 2 grandsons are to be sent to Winterfell, both of them named Walder.
Not too bad.
A son, Oliver. That's okay, we could live with that.
Yep.
A son, Oliver, to squire for Robb. Well, he needs someone to burnish that armour.
Right.
Arya to marry Walder's youngest son, Elmer, when they reach age.
That one...
Okay, not bad news for anyone currently listening to this story. And Robb has to marry a daughter of Robb's choosing.
Right, of his choosing. He gets to pick.
All right. Credit to Robb, he doesn't bat an eye. The Great Northern Army now splits. The mounted troops cross with Robb. The infantry stays on the east bank with Roose Bolton.
It's not that much different than Ned and Robert brokering the betrothal of Joffrey and Sansa. You know, I mean, neither of them got a say in it. At least he gets to pick his daughter.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, though, is that it's a bit of... I mean, let's go with the Arya's destined to be married off to someone for strategic alliance. The Freys are a bit lowly for a daughter of Winterfell.
Right.
But how lowly? I mean, who is she going to marry? Someone like, I don't know, she could marry Tommen Baratheon, perhaps?
Yeah.
Or maybe someone from Highgarden?
Yes, right, yeah.
A Loras Tyrell. Ooh, that would make sense.
Oh man, would it ever? Could you imagine?
Especially when Arya sulks all the way to the altar, like, I don't want to do this. Sansa's like,
yeah.
So I mean, probably it would either be to cement something in the north, like a northern lord who wasn't happy with the Starks or something, or it would be with one of the major houses from outside.
Right.
You'd think,
because there's only 2 daughters. Like she is the second daughter of Lord Eddard Stark. But she's one of 2. There's the higher price on more rare commodities, such as one of 2.
That being said, I mean, if you're going to marry off your daughter for strategic benefit, then this is one of the times you would think about cashing in said chip, really.
That's why you had that second one, just in case you needed.
Right.
Spur of the moment, big bargaining chip here.
But Robb, that's a big one, because that means a Frey will be Lady of Winterfell.
Yes, that's
a step up right there.
Yeah. That is definitely marrying below his station, and we'll get to the negotiating that Cat sort of. I don't know whether she actually negotiated or just agreed to everything he proposed.
What did he ask for? If this is what we arrived at.
So Robb does seem to be doing a lot of right things that he learned from Ned, as far as being a lord of a region and a battle commander. The chapter starts out by Cat mentioning that Robb is rotating lords to ride with him, each day, playing no favorites to any particular lord and listening to what each has to say and comparing what he's hearing from one and the versus the other.
Yeah, but I tell you, I'll side with, I think it was Tywin Lannister who said last time, until the sword has been tempered, you don't know how strong it is. So you can be a good battle commander on the march to the battle.
Right. Absolutely.
I might be able to pull that off. Come the battle.
When no arrows are whizzing past your ears and swords slashing at your face. It's as Mike Tyson famously once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes. That is a really... It's a fantastically deep comment from Mr. Tyson.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Who I'm going to call Mr. Tyson in case we ever have him on the show. It works in almost all circumstances.
It really
does. I've used it a couple of times at work as well.
Yeah, it really does. It's. I wonder if he made that up or if he got that from something, because that
I don't know.
It's very deep. I like it.
It is. So. Uncle Brendan Blackfish Tully is sending scouting reports back. He knew there were 4,000 men at the Twins, and he's also got reports from Riverham as well. So the Freys not joining the fight could have tipped the balance there a little bit, because 4,000 men is a considerable chunk here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're talking like even Tywin's army is only 20,000, I think, right? That was the estimate there. The northern host is 20,000, so 4,000 is a big, big army in this theatre,
right?
If you will.
Especially considering that Edmure lost apparently pretty quickly. Those 4,000 men might have helped hold Jaime's army off until Robb could have gotten there.
But Riverrun isn't lost, right? Edmure went out into the field to fight and lost there and was captured.
Right. Yeah, it hasn't been lost yet. They're under siege now by Jaime's army.
Yeah, but it does to Cat. It seems very reminiscent of Walder Frey's previous behaviour, that he would wait to see how the battle goes before he. And I mean, later on, he's going to make this point that he has 2 oaths which compete here. He's got an oath to the crown and an oath to his liege lord.
Yeah,
and they are at odds with one another. So he's within his rights to think about the decision a little bit because he's got to break one of his 2 oaths.
Right. Yeah.
But that he's waiting to find out which way the wind blows before he breaks that's pure Frey.
Yes. It's where he got the nickname the late Lord Frey by Cat's father, Hoster. We also find out later in this chapter that Walder is well aware of this moniker.
Right, yes.
But he says, he calls me late Lord Frey. Does he think I'm dead? Well, I tell you, I'll outlast him just like I outlasted his father. So, back in Cat 8, which was just the last chapter, we talked about her disdain for Walder Frey. And Robb was feeling pretty confident about his plans to split his forces, and cross the Green Fork at the Twins. And Cat told him, my father didn't trust him being Walder Frey, and you shouldn't trust him either. And she spends a lot of time at the beginning of this chapter kind of drilling into Robb's head that you should not trust Walder Frey, that we don't know what we're going to find when we get there.
Yeah, expect nothing from him and you won't be disappointed.
Exactly.
That line is actually said by Roderick Cassell in the TV show, who hasn't been sent back to Winterfell. So just a mild difference there. But in the last Tyrion chapter, he also smiled thinking back to when he was captured by Cat, that of the 12 Freys in the room, only 2 stood up to help her, and then they sat back down again when they realised they were out of step with their fellows.
Yeah.
Again, the Frey position being, let's wait and see.
Yes.
Let's make sure we're on the winning side by not choosing sides.
Yeah, and Cat outright admits to Robb she doesn't know what Walder's going to do, and likely Walder himself doesn't know what he's going to do yet, because he's keeping his options open.
Right, and to be fair to Walder Frey, that is reasonable. I mean, it's not like he is stringing them along having made his decision. He's stringing them along because he's trying to get the most out of this. He's not adamantly opposed to them. He just wants to get the best out of it.
Yep. Not willing to commit his pot yet, one way or the other.
Yeah. Kat does point out that Walder's son, one of Walder's sons, is married to Tywin's sister, so there is a family relationship there.
Yeah.
Which, that could sway things, but then again, with such a big brood, he probably has marriages to everybody in the kingdom.
Yeah, and that is what she says. She says that doesn't mean much. He's got a lot of kids. They got to marry someone. She's referring to Jenna Lannister, that's Tywin's younger sister, and Aemon Frey, which is the second son of Lord Walder. And she says that fact means little in itself, but I wonder exactly how true that is, because it seems like later Walder is offended by all kinds of family slights. So it seems like he takes his family things very seriously. He seems to base his pride off of his family. Yeah.
But taking pride in something and fighting for it aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
But now we've talked about that. Coming back to what we were talking about Arya before, that's another uplift on a Frey marriage right there.
Yeah.
To marry the little sister of Tywin Lannister.
Right.
To the second son of the Lord of the Twins.
Yeah. And only daughter, too. Is the...
yeah.
Lord Titus that's Tywin and Jenna's father,
Tywin's
their
father.
only daughter.
Yeah.
His only daughter. So Theon is one of the men that have gone out with Brynden Tully scouting, and he reports back that they've met some Lannister forces and have killed them, and also that the Freys have killed some Lannister men, and Robb is encouraged by this, but Cat, and I think I agree with her, says defending your own land is different than open battle with Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, although it does go to, it seems the die isn't cast in the Lannisters' favour.
Yeah.
Because he is still defending his land from the Lannisters,
Right, yeah. And each time something like this happens, Robb's stress over being able to cross grows. And he's starting to lash out, get very worked up about whether or not the fact that he needs to cross. They need to be able to cross here. And of course, Theon says that Lord Frey would be a fool to try and stop them crossing. We have 5 times the men they do. We could just take the twins if need be, which you had mentioned would be a possibility last Cat chapter, I think. But Cat points out, I think, as you mentioned in the summary, that it's wouldn't easily be done, and they don't really have the time to do it with Tywin marching toward them.
Especially because the nature of the twins is that you could never lay siege to it.
Yeah.
Because the whole point is you can't get both sides of it.
Right.
So they can always resupply from the other side.
Yeah.
So
you can't stop the flow of goods and food and stuff, which is the point of a siege.
Right.
Yeah. And that was a concern we did discuss last cat chapter about having basically all their eggs in this Frey basket, that this whole plan hinges on them being able to cross at the twins.
This is why the Freys built the bridge 600 years ago.
Exactly.
It's the one basket everybody needs.
Yep.
This is how they get to marry their children off to higher lords, because they own something of such strategic importance to everybody.
You know, you have mentioned this. I think it might have been in Pedantry, actually. I think it was possibly the last cat chapter, that why is there a 500-mile gap between the two crossings?
I did.
And you would think River Run, you would think they would have commanded some bridge be built so that you wouldn't have to entirely rely on the twins, that it would be, maybe owned and managed by River Run and be somewhere maybe at the 250-mile mark or something like that.
It would undermine the current story, but absolutely. If I were Lord of River Run, that would be my first commission. Let's get a new crossing point over this river.
I'm tired of owing all these favors to the Freys.
Yeah. So, Brynden Tully comes back and reports that Edmure has been lost in the battle. He's now a hostage of the Lannisters. So this is yet more bad news for the Stark side of things, because they don't have any hostages.
They keep losing theirs.
And yes, they lose their only hostages. And meanwhile, the other side list of hostages grows and grows.
Yeah. Yeah, and Robb, he's, like I said, every time he gets more bad news, he starts to get really stressed and kind of lash out. And he says, I'll bring the twins down around their ears if I have to. And Cat kind of scolds him and says, you need to learn to use words, not swords, to get things done sometimes.
Yeah. So Cat is hoping that Ned has taught, as well as teaching Robb how to hold a sword and command men, he's also taught him when to kneel, and giving a bit of honour and respect to Walder Frey might be the thing that's required here.
Yeah. You just have to bite your tongue and
exactly
please and thank you your way through it.
Yeah.
And apparently just give in to any demand that Walder Frey makes when the time comes.
Again, we don't know what she held off.
That's right. She says the graveyards of the Seven Kingdoms are filled with men who didn't learn to kneel. And I thought the dungeons of the Red Keep have some men there too who also didn't learn to just do the thing that needed to be done at that moment.
Fortunately, not yet in their graves in this case.
Right.
Yeah, so they finally get to the twins, and they realise, indeed, that the siege is not an option. It's too stout. The second castle on the west bank means that they can resupply. There's just no way they can do this. Even if they could take the first keep, the central tower is yet another gauntlet they would have to run, which would decimate their forces trying to get past it.
Yeah.
So
it was a very smart decision 600 years ago to build this only bridge, apparently.
I do wonder, though, I'm going to bring this up in pedantry, but why is it called the twins if there's this third tower? I mean, you wouldn't call it the twins if there were three towers. You'd call it the triplets.
I guess the water tower, as that middle one's called, is just a lone tower. The castles on each side are identical.
Okay. All right. I'll give you that, I suppose. But I mean, their sigil should be three towers.
Yeah, yeah.
It should be castle, tower, castle,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Sir Stevron, who is, as you mentioned in the summary, he is the heir to the twins. He's in his mid-60s and still waiting to be the lord of the twins. He and some of his brothers emerge from the castle, and they ask Robb to meet with their father. Well, they ask on behalf of their father to come meet with him, and the Northern Lords kind of go crazy at this idea. They're like shouting things like, "That's a terrible idea! He can't be trusted!" Totally no tact. They do know Sir Stevron can hear them, right? He's literally standing right there.
One thing I want you to do, Stefan, I want you to listen very carefully to what they say when you ask this. I got it, Dad. I'll bring that home.
Yeah. I mean, they're all lords. You'd think they'd have some kind of tact on, like, don't be shouting these terrible things about his father right in front of him.
Maybe, and this could be the show sort of like colours my thinking about the Freys, but the Freys seem like they're kind of a little bit poor and downtrodden, kind of like a little bit like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Do you know? I was
like
trying
like
to
a
think.
Mormon cult.
Yeah. I was trying to think of the same way to how to properly phrase what I think of the Freys. Ha! I didn't even mean to do that.
Hey, that's very good.
And I couldn't quite put my finger on how to describe them. Because, they seem kind of like I think it's because they're just not very reputable. Because they do things like wait until the last minute to commit. They do seem to be looked down upon, but they are also obviously very strategically important to have them on your side.
So I wonder if the Northern Lords didn't realise they were talking to the heir of Riverrun.
Right.
They just thought it was just some schmo. We can say what we want in front of this guy.
Yeah. Kat mentions in the description that it's Sir Stevron, but maybe the rest of them aren't aware that that's who this is.
Oh, Sir Stevron, the stable master from the twins.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But before the Lords really do put their foot in it, Kat sort of intervenes and says, look, I'll go instead. I mean, yes, there's reasons why we should be afraid to send Robb. I'll go instead. Walder Frey has known me since I was a child. I'll be perfectly safe. And she doesn't quite believe what she's saying, but she's hopeful. Yeah,
and she also she meets with his family. When she meets with Walder, his whole family is there, and she's reminded of a quote that her dad told her, and that Walder Frey is the only man in the Seven Kingdoms who can form an army out of his breeches. Because there's a lot of kids, and they're not even kids. Most of them are middle-aged or old men at this point. So there's something about this part right here, though, and I don't know if maybe this belongs in pedantry or not, but so she mentions that 20 of 21 living sons are there with him. The only one that she says isn't is Sir Perwyn, because he was a kind of a trade-off. When Kat came with Sir Stevron, he said, my brother Perwyn will stay with you guys, and Robb said he'll be our honored guest. So she says 20 of 21 sons minus Sir Perwyn are here, 36 grandsons, 19 great-grandsons, a bunch of daughters and granddaughters and all that. But if all but Sir Perwyn are present, then doesn't that mean that Aemon Frey, the husband to Tywin's sister Jenna, is in attendance in this room right here? It feels like a major conflict of interest if he's standing there. It does.
Now, worse still is if she's sitting next to him.
Right.
I'd like you to clear the room, especially her, the blonde one.
Yeah, that blonde one there. She's giving me a really evil eye here. So there's technically 22 sons that Walder has, but Jeremy Frey, who was the 10th son, has likely died. I was doing some research into it, and it seems like he died prior to this. It's not sure exactly when, but it's like a 10-year window that he likely
But
died.
He's the missing one, not Aemon. Aemon is
still
there,
living, yes.
And is married to Tywin's... His brother-in-law is Tywin Lannister.
Yes, exactly, yes. And Walder says a few things that make me think that there are 21 sons, that Jeremy has already died, because he says, I'll match you son for son and still have 18 when yours are dead. We know Kat has 3, 18, 3, 21. So it seems pretty likely that Jeremy is dead. And if that's the case, then Aemon Frey is standing in this room.
Right. That's a good spot. I think that's pedantry. Cut and splice this into pedantry.
Right.
So Walder is 90. His new wife is only 16. We knew about the wedding. We heard about the wedding because when Kat was talking to the Freys at the inn before she captured Tyrion, or as she captured Tyrion, they were saying that their lord was going to get married and that they were hoping that House Tully would come to the wedding.
Yes.
Which apparently he did not. So
yeah, we learned
one
that
more slap in the face for the Freys, who are prodigious and thin-skinned.
Yes. And so this new wife, the 16-year-old wife, is the 8th Lady Frey, and her name is Joyous. Well, her maiden name was Joyous Enford. And House Enford, not a whole lot about them, but their arms have a golden heron, and the heron has a silver fish in its mouth, and it's on gold on pink background. It's about.
I'm going to come back to the question we've sort of posed a couple of times here. What did Kat not agree to? I think Arya is lucky to not be the 9th wife of.
That could be it. Best she could do was get it down to the youngest of his sons.
Yes,
at least
someone closer to her age.
Yeah, exactly.
So Walder's rude, and his sons call him out for it. Walder does not stand for being contradicted in his own hall.
Yes,
and he tells them that the 3 kings have been guests there.
Yeah,
and you're not sure who he means by this.
No, I did as much research as I possibly could, and I could not find any reference to who the royalty he's referring to. So he was born in 208. And so here's some options. There's info on his father, Lord Frey, and it stops after 212 in the Dunk and Egg book. He's a character in the Dunk and Egg book, The Mystery Knight. So it stops at 212. So he could have ruled any time after 212.
Oh, you mean when did Walder become Lord of the twins?
Yes.
Anytime between his 4th birthday and...
And 254 is the earliest we're aware that Walder Frey was Lord of the twins. So in that time period, Aerys the First Targaryen was 209 to 221. Maekar Targaryen was 221 to 233. Aegon the Fifth was 233 to 259. Jaehaerys was 259 to 262, and then Aerys and Robert. Now we know Robert just made the trek north and back south, so it's possible he could have stopped at the twins along the way, him and Cersei, which would have been one of the queens he references. So could have been any of that group from Aerys the First through Robert.
Do you think he was saying that they were king? I think by implication they were kings when they visited.
That would what I would assume, yeah. Right.
Okay. Because I was just thinking he might have hosted Robert when Robert was much younger, you know.
True. Yeah, you never know. But I assumed he meant while they were kings.
Right. I'm just looking something up because you've triggered a thought here. Yeah, the one thing is, you were just saying that Robert might have stopped on the way. The twins is not on the King's Road. It is a long way from the King's Road.
Yeah.
So it would have been a significant deviation to go there. I mean, Robert has been king for a long time, or had been king for quite a long time. So he's had other opportunities. But
maybe during the Greyjoy Rebellion. Who knows?
That's an interesting one. I wonder how you would go from King's Landing to Pike.
Yeah.
To squash that rebellion.
Yeah. Anyway.
Probably sail around the southern peninsula, you'd think. But, Anyway, we digress.
Yes, just a bit.
Yeah. So, it does seem that as Tully Bannermen, they would be obligated to allow this army to cross, but Walder, he says, well, I've got conflicting vows. It's not my fault. I have to, weigh up what's best for my family when I've got 2 conflicting vows.
Yeah, and that's legit, I mean, it's not cool for this situation here, but it's a legitimate argument that who do his allegiance lie to? One other thing that I was thinking about from our discussion a little bit earlier is that Walder says, why should I, he mentions that they're all waiting, all his family is waiting for him to die. And he said, Sir Steveron's been waiting for 40 years for me to die so he can be the Lord of the Twins. And it just, in my mind, I thought about how different that is from Jeor Mormont. Because Walder says, why should I die so that Steveron can be Lord? Whereas Jeor abducted his seat at Bear Island, gave it to his son Jorah, who then, of course, blew it and ended up being exiled. But it's just very different parenting philosophies here.
Yeah. Also, it has a lot of reminiscence to me for the royal family in England. I mean, the Queen is now 94 years of age.
Right.
And Prince Charles, who is going to be king and is waiting in the wings, is 71.
Oh, yeah.
And he's really, really annoyed.
That's right. I didn't even think about that connection. Yeah.
Yep. So Queen Elizabeth II is Walder Frey of our time.
So she could abdicate the throne to him if she so chose, right?
She said for 30, 40 years that she thinks that abdication devalues the throne.
Oh.
So she doesn't intend to do it.
Meanwhile, Charles is like, does it? But
does it?
Does it really?
You know what really devalues the throne? Having an incontinent old lady on it.
So Kat does try to threaten Walder first. She kind of snaps because he's saying some kind of mean things about her and her family mostly. And she kind of snaps and says, my son has an army of 20,000 men out front of your gates there. And Walder correctly sees that they're really no threat because when Tywin gets there, they're going to be, as he puts it, 20,000 fresh corpses.
Yeah, and he says, your husband's in a dungeon, your father's sick, probably dying, your brother's already in chains. Exactly what do I need to fear from you, lot?
Very solid point. He sees it clearly.
Yes.
He might be, be 90 years old, but he still seems to have it mentally. That's for sure. So he mentions your father might be dying. And Kat's been worried about her father's illness, mostly because he's been silent and she's not heard any decisions that he's been making. It's all been Edmure's. And I was trying to remember, when did Kat first begin to worry about her father? And it goes back to the day of the duel between Ser Vardis and Bronn. She gets a letter from Edmure talking about his plan for the defense of the Riverlands. And there's no reference to Hoster. And she thought Hoster must be very sick to give Riverland defenses to Edmure entirely. So that's where it first began. And since then, she's still not gotten any news from him or heard of any decisions that he's made. So,
yeah. Nevertheless, Walder's still insulted that Hoster wasn't at his wedding, even if he is dying.
Right.
For most of us, that would be a tough insult to take, but Walder can take insult at just about anything.
Yeah. Plus, it's his 8th.
Exactly.
I think it's safe to stop RSVPing for a wedding once it's like your 3rd or at least your 4th.
I am not buying you another coffee maker. I don't care what.
What do you do with all those?
I lose them in the divorce settlement. What do you think?
I guess when you've got 2 identical castles, you need multiple of everything. So.
That's true. They're perfect mirror images of one another. Yeah. I really like your painting. Can you just do me another one? Just like it, same size. So Walder's also offended that Lysa Arryn scoffed at his suggestion of little Robert Arryn being fostered at the twins.
Yeah, he should just be lucky there was no Moondor around when he made that suggestion, really. He got off easy. Her own sister almost took a trip out the Moondor when she suggested something similar.
So he says that, and he says that Lysa reacted badly to it, or she scoffed at the idea.
Yeah.
But then Jon Arryn said, oh no, Robert's going to be fostered at Dragonstone with Stannis Baratheon. And this made Lysa storm off.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. He just took it as offense, but Kat, it keeps striking a chord with Kat.
Yeah.
she really likes to argue about this point. You remember in the same chapter that I was just referring to, the one at the duel, right before the duel happened, she and Maester Coleman were having a similar debate about where little Robert was going to be fostered. And
you know what this comes down to? It comes down to the fact that she believes everything Ned tells her.
Right.
When Ned tells her something, she takes it as gospel truth.
I guess so, yeah. Because that's where she got the idea from. When Robert was in the crypts of Winterfell with Ned, he told Ned, I was going to have little Robert foster with Tywin Lannister. And so Ned must have told her that. And that's, she's taken that to be absolutely true. But it's just...
But I mean, presumably it was true. I mean, if that's what Robert said, then it's true, right?
Yeah.
But I guess...
I think both are true. I think both can be true. Jon Arryn could have had plans of fostering little Robert with Stannis Baratheon. Then Jon Arryn died. Robert Baratheon wasn't aware of this plan, so he made a different plan to have little Robert fostered at Casterly Rock. I just find it so odd that Cat keeps having such issues with this possible other fostering story.
Yeah. Makes you suspicious about why she's suspicious.
Right.
Why is George Martin leading us to this?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think she kind of alludes real quickly in this chapter to the thought, what, like Stannis? Do you want to foster your kid with Stannis? Did I hear that right?
You want to foster little Robert with Stannis?
Yeah. There couldn't be two characters much different than little Robert and Stannis Baratheon.
The breastfeeding will be cut off day one.
Yes. That seems likely.
Yeah. So the haggling ensues, and we don't hear that. That's kind of off camera. And then Kat returns to Robb.
Haggling in quotation marks here.
Right. Well, again, we don't know what she won.
Right.
She doesn't brag about her successes,
Yes.
Rickon doesn't have to marry any of them. Do you notice?
That's true. They both forgot.
So because of the way she listens, she sort of goes in ascending order of like, so
right.
He wants a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, she starts with the easy stuff. I've agreed to
Christmas
foster
cards
2
every
year. He was like, Robb was like, oh, that's not too bad. That's all.
Yeah.
I was like,
Squire.
Does Walder Frey seem like the kind of guy who's only going to want 2 grandsons fostered and a squire?
but occasionally he must look around the hall and think, I've got to get rid of some of these. Too many mouths to feed. I want you to foster 7 of these.
Right,
guys.
well, maybe that's part of the negotiation that Cat could have had is that all those lords out there each have to take 2 grandsons.
Oh, you see, she should have agreed to that. She should have got Arya off the hook and said, I'll tell you what, I'll get rid of 12 of these grandchildren.
Right. Yeah.
2 each. Bolton, Karstark, Umber.
They all have sons who need wives too, so, could offload some of those daughters of yours if you want.
Yeah. So, so you know the rest. He's going to get a squire, who's another grandson is going to be the squire.
I think it's his son.
A son is going to be the squire.
It's his.
Arya's to marry the youngest son when they're both of age, and the big one, Robb Stark, heir to Winterfell, is to marry his choice of Frey daughters.
Yeah. Now back in I think it was Ned 5, he and Arya had a conversation on the stairs when he suddenly came across her balancing on one foot on the top of a stairwell. And he's listing all the things that Bran can still do, even though he's lost the use of his legs. He can be a lord, a counselor, an explorer, a high septon. And Arya asks if she can do these things. And Ned says, you'll marry a king and your sons will do these things. And Arya is like, that's Sansa's thing. Not me. So I think Robb is right that Arya is not going to be pleased with the idea. But,
No.
But then also the thing about Robb's choice of daughters, I'm using air quotes here, it's not quite as great as it sounds because, so, his third youngest daughter, whose name is Tyra, is 28 years old.
Whereas Robb's only 15.
Robb is 15.
Right?
Now, Rosin is 15.
Oh, so
there you go. And that's the second youngest daughter, and the youngest daughter is Shirey, and she's around 5-ish. So, really, not a lot of choice options for Robb here.
Well, if Rosin isn't to your taste, then just, wait 10 years
right.
and marry Shirey,
I guess so.
I mean, he could go to a granddaughter. They're probably older granddaughters, but at the same time, I think Frey wants a daughter to marry.
Yes, exactly.
Winterfell.
So really, it's pretty much Rosin or bust here. Someone twice your age, someone less than half your age,
or someone a third your age.
Right.
So Cat still doesn't trust Walder Frey. She got the agreement she was looking for, but she doesn't trust him. Both parties, both the Freys and Robb's force, will leave 400 men behind to preserve the twins, which is good. I think it's the right thing to do. The twins is still strategically important. You need it to be manned to the point where it can defend itself.
Yeah, although I think Cat's primary reason for wanting Robb to leave 400 men behind was to make sure that Walder Frey stays honest to the plan here. And doesn't do like you had said. I think you had said it a previous episode, that what if they let them cross, and then if they have to retreat, they don't let them get back across.
Yeah. That's a scary thought.
So the force is split here. The larger force is actually the foot force that's staying on the eastern side of the Green Fork. Meanwhile, all the mounted army is crossing to the west side. And this is kind of what I meant last Cat chapter when I said about adding loyalty and trustworthiness to the list of attributes for the commander of the eastern host of this army, because he's going to be outnumbered and has little to no mounted soldiers. She said 9/10 of the mounted force are going across to the western side. So if things go wrong on that eastern side, maybe he could roll on Robb. Maybe he would see that things are stacking up against him and make a decision that benefits him and not Robb in the north.
Yeah, I mean, we've not got any reason to doubt Roose Bolton's loyalty,
right?
But we do see him as being smarter than your average Northern Lord.
Yeah, that's why he was chosen, because he's calculating.
Right, and there's a point at which smart is very similar to cowardly,
right,
or treacherous.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that point might come. Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting.
And if he rolls or if he capitulates in some way, then that eastern host of Tywin Lannister has a clear path to the north, aside from Moat Cailin, and that's a big aside because, according to Cat, Moat Cailin is highly defensible and highly difficult to get through.
Yeah,
but still, he's kind of free running up there.
Yeah. I do wonder actually about the value of actually engaging Tywin's force. I mean, the thing is, if you're sending these guys down on a suicide mission to just throw themselves at Tywin's forces and kill themselves, that does seem like a waste of human life.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
It feels like they could go down there and harry them, slow them down, and maybe retreat and lure them further and further north, and then retreat very quickly either to the twins or to Moat Cailin.
Right.
Both of which are highly defensible.
Yeah, that's...
And then Tywin's army's stuck in a non-strategic place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
They can't go north. They can't cross the Green Fork.
Yeah,
and they are.
And if they retreated into the twins at that point, the twins would be incredibly well defended, and they're all infantrymen. Right. You don't need necessarily mounted force at that point to hold a castle.
I think we got this. That's what I would do then if I was Roose Bolton. I would protect my own hide by retreating very quickly, but I would tell them I was doing this strategically.
Right.
I was luring Tywin into danger. All right, give me some background.
Well, background was a little challenging this episode. You would think with how large Walder Frey's family is that there would be just a ton of information that I could have pulled from, but you'd be surprised. Not so much. So, and
they're all just like sort of stick figures. All these hundreds of Freys.
So what I thought we'd do here is do a quick geography lesson of the Riverlands, because we are going to spend some time here. So the Riverlands, as you might have guessed, are named for the number of rivers which are present. Aside from the three forks of the Trident, you've also got the Tumblestone, which combines with the Red Fork at River Run. They continue east until they meet with the Blue Fork, which flows from its source near Seaguard. And then the Green Fork, which is the one that the Twins is on, the easternmost fork, it runs south from the swamps of the Neck. The three forks come together a short distance from Lord Haraway's town to form the Trident, which then pours into the Bay of Crabs at an area called Salt Pans. Along with those are the northern Blackwater Rush, which runs to King's Landing, and the God's Eye River that runs from the God's Eye through the southern Riverlands. Now, the Riverlands do not contain any major cities. However, there are plenty of towns such as Fairmarket, Herontown, Haraway, Maidenpool, Salt Pans, and Stony Sept. Their major castles, which we've talked about a bit over the past few chapters, are Derry, Harrenhal, Raventree Hall, Riverrun, Seaguard, Stonehenge, and the Twins. Additional noteworthy places in the Riverlands are the old ruins at Oldstones, where in ancient times House Mud had its castle, and the God's Eye Lake with the Isle of Faces in it. And there's a place called the Quiet Isle, which is located at the mouth of the Trident. The River Road runs from Casterly Rock in the Westerlands east to River Run, and then on to the crossroads where it meets the King's Road and the High Road. On the east side of the region, the Duskendale Road connects Maidenpool with Duskendale in the Crownlands. So, or you could just look at a map.
Well, while you were doing it, I was looking at the map actually, and there is a thing about what you were asking before about the availability of a second crossing over the Green Fork. In actual fact, from River Run, you might as well just take the river road to Derry and then cross at the ford.
Yeah.
You can get anywhere you want east of the Green Fork just as quickly that way as you could if there was a crossing before the Twins, I would say.
I guess adding a crossing before the Twins just gives you a back door. If you can't get down the road, not having to travel 500 miles to cross might be beneficial.
Yeah.
Strategically.
Yeah. True. So comparison with the television show, mostly this was the same. The discussion between the Northern Lords about who should go and negotiate with Walder Frey was held as the Welcome Party rode towards them, not in front of the Welcome Party, which I think was probably better.
Not an earshot of Four Sons.
The Twins does not include the Mid-River Tower.
Oh.
So it really does look like Twins.
Okay.
I think that was a decision which I approve of. Kat's conversation with Walder is very similar. She presents the news of her negotiations to Robb in front of Theon and Lord Umber.
Oh.
And they both snicker at Robb's plight. Robb says, "Were any of the daughters?" And she says, "One of them was okay."
Now, they do mention the description when the Frey sons are riding out of the castle toward Robb and Cat. The description does mention that all the Freys look like weasels. So that doesn't exactly bode well for Robb finding. Now, Hey, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, one, and two, looks aren't everything, so...
Very true. Very true. I will say one thing, and this is definitely a sort of strategic difference between the book and the show. They never refer to the river as the Green Fork. They call it the Trident all the time, which I think is a strange thing to call it, really, because it's called the Trident because the three rivers come together at roughly the same point, so it looks a bit like a trident. But that's only really at the coming together point that it looks like a trident.
Yeah.
500 miles upriver, it's just a river.
Right.
It's not 3 rivers, it's just 1 river. So calling it the Trident is a bit odd.
They probably did it for simplicity's sake, for those who aren't nerds like us that want to study all 3 forks of the river to keep them straight.
Yeah. So on that subject, Pedantry Corner, you had one this week.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked at the Northern Lords, their dismay at the sight of the twins, that it was not possible to siege it, to siege the castle with an army, like they'd never heard of it before. Like they knew nothing about the concept that there was a castle on each side. I was like, has none of them seen or heard anything about this castle?
They've just come from Moat Cailin. Perhaps their expectations would have been skewed by the dilapidated state.
Good point.
They thought they could just walk up to it and shove it over. But...
We'll make our own bridge out of this tower right here.
Yeah. So, I've got one. Brynden Blackfish Tully has got amazing information from him and his 100 men ranging around the place finding information, including what happened at River Run.
Yeah.
How did they get across this river to find out what happened at River Run?
Yeah.
Why not send the 20,000 men that way? Whatever his secret is. I mean, he's called the Blackfish. Maybe he swam.
He swam across it.
It seems a bit strange.
They do mention that they got some of the info from Lannister scouts that they caught. So, I guess they could have gotten all the info. Maybe they got all the info they need that way. But, yeah, it'd still be hard to know as much detail as they do by being on the same side of the river.
Right, exactly. I'll be like, you range as far as you can that way. Well, there's a river. You go 10 feet. And nothing over here either.
Nothing under this rock.
I do have a piece of TV pedantry.
Okay.
On the TV show, after all this happens, you see the army ride across the bridge. And they come out the other side. And then they split up.
Where are they going?
Which geographically makes no sense. One of the groups has to stay on the other side of the river. I mean, that's the whole point.
Did they split up, circle around, and come back through?
Well, if we're marrying off 2 of our children, we're going to ride back and forth across that bridge, let me tell you.
I want an unlimited pass on this bridge.
It feels like they missed... I mean, obviously, within the show, you don't see the map, so it's not that important. But for me, that's critically important, that you're trapping the Lannisters on one side of the river.
Yes.
So the force has to split up before you cross the river, not after. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid pedantry right there.
But that was the TV show. Like, the book was rock solid. The book, clearly they know what they're doing. Do you have a news and notes? Do we have reader mail?
We do have reader mail. We got a very nice message just a few hours ago, actually, from Dammy, Dammy. I believe that would be Dammy. He is a newish listener. He is through episode 11, and he said he's gaining new insights revisiting Westeros with us. And he's...
Well, all right. That's why we're doing it.
That's right, so...
Okay, so Amazon now has podcasts on Amazon Music app.
Yeah.
So you can you'll watch us there.
That's right.
Watch us there? Is that what you do with podcasts?
That would be tricky.
I don't know what I'm talking about, do I? I've never done this before. You can listen to us on Amazon Music app.
Yeah.
So there's a note here which I am desperate to learn more about. Tell me, Mackelly.
So George Martin, in an interview for a new book that's coming out about the Game of Thrones TV show, he mentioned what his very least favorite scene of all 8 seasons of A Game of Thrones was. And it was a very short scene where the hunting scene where Robert gets gored. You know, in the book, there is no hunting scene. Ned is woken. Right. Robert's been gored. In the TV show, they have a scene where Robert, Renly, Barristan Selmy, and Lancel are just walking through the woods with some spears, and Robert's kind of giving it to Renly a little bit about back in the olden days, how much better things were. Yeah. And Renly gives it back to him a little bit, and Lancel just keeps running up to Robert and saying, "Some wine, Your Grace?" And apparently that is George Martin's very least favorite scene in the entire show. Now,
does he explain why?
He does. He said it was a budgeting issue. They just didn't have a big enough budget back then. And a real royal hunting party would have tons of people and pavilions and hunting dogs and, kind of like he references what's happening in the book. And so apparently it just really stuck in his craw that this scene is just four guys traipsing through the woods. He's like the boar is just going to show up. Like they're just going to stumble across a boar. So,
but that being said, though, I mean, if I were a boar and 100 people showed up and pitched tents, I would steer clear.
Right.
4 guys coming through the woods, I might not notice them and stumble into them.
Yeah, solid. That's true. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been a boar or on a boar hunt, so what do I know? Well, I should point out, when I said I'd never been a boar, I was referring to the pig-like animal. I've been boring many times.
I almost made a comment when you said that, but I let it pass.
You shouldn't. Never hold me up on these things. All right, let's conclude because we're over time here. So Robb shows some of his impetuousness when he's stressing over what the Freys will do. But I mean, I guess the thing about that, I will say, when you're riding towards an event that you know is going to be stressful, obsessing about it is a kind of natural thing to do. You know?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of sympathy for him there.
Yeah, but he steps up when it's time. He
yes.
Cat says to his credit, he didn't flinch. And so far, the only Freys he's seen at that point are Sir Stevron and 3 of Sir Stevron's brothers. So, Sir Stevron is in his 60s, and Robb is 15, so he's probably picturing Sir Stevron with, long hair or something.
You imagine how, all 4 of these guys are sort of just weasel-faced ugly, and he's like, oh, God, let her be pretty. Just let her be pretty. But generally, the Freys seem like they would be incredibly useful allies. They have an incredibly important bridge. They have a lot of soldiers. An army from his breeches, but also from his lands, it seems.
Right.
And so, brokering this deal, possibly the most important strategic advantage that this Northern Army has managed to accrue so far.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be basically losses everywhere so far, especially now with Edmure captured.
Yeah. And, he is going to be Lord of Winterfell regardless. So he is not necessarily needing anything from his wife as far as, gaining respectability or anything like that. He's already the Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, as long as he's able to retain those titles. So,
True. And of course, this whole thing could take a couple of years to sort out. I mean, this is a big conflict that's building up here. And Walder's in his 90s. Maybe by the time this debt comes due, Walder's gone and no one remembers it.
Yeah, that could be.
Or he can talk to Sir Stevron and say, look, I got this brother. I can't remember his name, but you definitely marry one.
Yeah, that could be the way to do it right there. The Frey family reputation, it doesn't seem exactly completely solid. I think they're kind of thought of as a bit selfish and disloyal. But,
Yeah.
But the Stark reputation is very solid. So again, it's not like Robb needs a wife to enhance, his position very much.
Yeah. So you think that Kat's proved her worth for getting this done?
Well, I think she's proved her worth in helping Robb to get to this point. I would worry that if she wasn't there, Robb might have taken offense to Walder's, tone toward him.
Offensiveness?
Yes, exactly. He's a 15-year-old boy. He may have smarted off or done something that prevented them from being able to cross, or, got angry and decided they were going to siege him. I think Kat's presence helped smooth things out.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. I thought you meant that she'd managed to negotiate the deal. I think the deal would have happened. Whoever was sent to negotiate, and the terms were set. There was basically, we're capitulating to what you want, Lord Frey. What do you want?
Right. Yeah, negotiation was really just, a list of his demands and saying, okay.
Yeah. And he certainly appears thin-skinned, appears to take offense to any and everything.
Yeah, and Cat doesn't seem to trust him.
Even now, yeah.
Yeah. And now that they've crossed, can Walder still have an impact on Robb? The whole thing seems a little bit tenuous. What if they get to River Run and then the Freys turn on the Northern Army? And then you've got Jaime's 20,000 and the Freys 4,000 and Robb's stuck in between them.
Well, but the 4,000's come with him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. You get to River Run, you begin to engage in a fight with Jaime's army, and then these 4,000, maybe Aemon Frey, who happened to be standing in the room, said, made a deal with his father, hey, let it look like we're going to be on their side.
Yeah, the flip side of this, of course, is if he could destroy Jaime's army at River Run, he could then take the river road back to the ford and then come up the King's Road and hammer an anvil around Tywin.
Yeah.
If everything goes to plan.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But he split his army, so there's no going back now.
Yes, he did. Could be genius, could be disaster.
Exactly.
I
guess we shall see.
Yes. All right, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yes, I apologize for a couple weeks ago when the episode was a week late getting out on YouTube. It was while I was having computer issues and I couldn't get a file generated to upload on to YouTube. So that has been remedied. So anyway, if you like what we're doing, if you wouldn't mind giving us a rate or a review, that would be great. We'd really appreciate it. If you don't have time to leave us a review, we understand, but if you could just slide that finger over to 5 stars, we would very much appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.